Hey, God bless you. It's been a while now. And I've missed you. I've missed myself. Part of the reason I started this was, well, I didn't know when I started it that it was going to be such a psychological help in this time when everybody's so pixelated in society. Everybody's in their own little place, in their own little screen, in their own little bubble. It's really hard. My brother messaged me for the first time in a long time today, and he said, I've never felt so alone in my life. Yeah, it's really bad. So when I started this channel, it was started primarily to bring assurance of salvation to evangelicals, and I'll return to that. I have a deep desire to return to that and talk some more about that. I've just been overwhelmed, with a master's program, and some other stuff that's been going on. But I noticed something really cool and helpful in understanding society lately. But anyway, I digress. What I wanted to talk about was how horror movies in the modern day, today, in the 21st century, are symptomatic of where our society is. It's symptomatic of the, I don't know if you'd want to call it religion, worldview of our society and how much it has changed, right? And think about it. Go back into the 20th century. And let me see, I had a snazzy way of talking about this. And hold on a second, I'll pull it right right back up. Watch this. Good old Grok will help me out here. This is going to be all edited out anyway. Yeah. Okay, so this is how I'm going to talk about it. The evolution of horror in a post-Christian world. And from Godful to Godless, okay? That's the evolution of this. And the funny thing is, I was starting to meditate on it, like, what's the difference between the horror movies of the 20th century and the horror movies of the 21st century? And I was trying to think of a hinge point when you could have a blip on the radar and see the tide kind of turn. And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, the Blair Witch Project. That's in the 90s, I believe. But that's when the switch, and the funny thing is, I did a little research and looked it up, and I'm not the only one who realized that. Some guy at Berkeley wrote some guy at Berkeley wrote a paper about it. Yeah, he wrote a paper about how in that movie, it's one of the first times you don't see any religious symbology in the whole movie. You don't see any. And the whole witch thing, that started then too. But anyway, back to it. So, what started all this was that I watched, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of 2024's best horror flicks. That's what I watched. And they are Hereditary, Oddity, Late Night with the Devil, New Life, Companion, Heretic, and Nosferatu. Okay? That's 7 movies. Okay? And 6 of them are alike, and 1 is unalike. Okay? It's because 6 I put under the category of Godless, and this other movie I put under the category of Godful. And I think I should talk a little bit about that, about what the difference is between Godful and Godless in the context of the horror genre. So I think that what I mean by that is that in the 20th century movies, right from the beginning of the Hollywood movies, the monster in the movie was the bad guy, okay? The monster was at odds with what was good and right and beautiful, okay? And the monster was run away from, or the monster was used to teach a moral lesson about what not to do or how not to be, or the monster was pitied, right? The monster was pitied. And whenever, and these are all Godful movies, and they're Godful not because of that, but because there's an underlying morality, right? There's an underlying Christian worldview, okay? There's an underlying understanding of goodness and evil, right? That we presuppose and assume when we watch those movies in the 20th century. If you look at a movie like, okay, look at one of maybe the most, I'd say it's the best horror movie ever made, The Exorcist. Now, people will say The Shining, but it really doesn't come close. Because in that story, it's a wonderful story. It's not just flashy possession, devil puking stuff, you know? It's not just that. It's a beautiful movie about a priest who sacrifices his boxing career and what would make him happy for his mother, and the devil uses that to torment him. And he comes across this girl who's possessed, right? And in the end, what happens is he bears the cross for her. He opens himself up and becomes a vessel for the demon that's in her, and he takes it in himself and is flung out this 2-story window and down this steep set of stairs, where just before he dies, he gives a last confession. So you know, although the demon had been in him, he was now clean and he was going to his reward, right? So there's an idea of good overcoming evil, right? But now you get to a movie like, say, Late Night with the Devil. They willingly allow a girl to be possessed by the devil. They call him whatever, I can't remember, I wouldn't even repeat it, but they call this demon into this girl, into this child on TV for entertainment, you know? And two, it's not a fighting against evil. It's not a running away from evil. It's not fight or flight. It's an embrace of it. In Hereditary, it's about multi-generational witchcraft and curses. You know, and the same people that believe in that won't believe in baptismal regeneration, right? Yeah, because they're liars, hypocrites. And then the movie Oddity, it's the same thing. It's a mother's mother, our grandmother's mother was a witch, and there's some kind of curse passed down, right? And then New Life is just like a dystopian, hopeless. You don't get the sense that there's an assumption. See, let me say this. Even Friday the 13th is a Godful movie. You know why? Because there's an assumption when you went to that movie as a kid, you thought that Crystal Lake's neighborhoods and things were just like your own. And in your own neighborhood, people went to work during the week and they went to church on Sunday. And everybody was one hell of a sinner. And, you know, everybody went to church on Sunday. And there's this assumption of this Christian world happening, even in the Silver Lake world. So it's a Godful horror flick, right? And Jason is the bad guy. He's run from, and sometimes somebody like burns him or something, you know? They fight. But that's Godful horror. And then you get to the Oddity, Heredity, Late Night with the Devil, New Life. Companion is kind of a dystopian horror question about what is consciousness and things like that. What is consciousness, I guess, is the question it addresses, as there's an AI sex bot who comes to her senses and kills or murders. You know, I don't even know if that's, I guess it would be possible if she were conscious. And then there's Heretic, which the whole movie, he kidnaps, tortures, and eventually kills one of the girls. Oh, sorry, spoiler. In order to prove that believing anything is bullshit. That it's all about like it's all about the power of personal faith, or the power of belief, right? That's what it is. It's believe it and it will happen. It's not even that. It's like, if you imagine it, it's good enough for you, then go for it, you know? The Godful movie, the one that I will say is a Godful movie in this bunch, is Nosferatu. because in that you get the sense that you know the history, the setting is like it's like a church, a village, and they have a church that regulates time. It regulates the week. It's where everybody is, all the baptisms are recorded, so you know who lives in town and where they're at and who's married to who. And it's a church-centric kind of town. So it's a Godful movie, no matter how dark it is. Just like the Bram Stoker's Dracula. Godful movie. Carrie, Godful movie, right? The Shining, Godful movie. There's a presumption of Western society and a Christian society. There's a presumption of it, but not anymore. Watch the movies. What was that movie? Witch. That was another one. That was a while ago, though. The movie Witch. You got to the movie is like this surreal, a bunch of nubile naked girls levitating around a forest fire like pagan worship, witches. That's the end. At least in a Godful movie, you get some redemption, or it's like a serial kind of movie where, and I mean like in the movie sense, where it carries over. You think the guy's dead, but he's not, But they're trying to kill evil. They're at odds with evil. That's a Godful movie. Or the setting is an assumed Western Christian worldview setting. That's the thing. Oh, and here's the other amazing, this is what brought me to this point, was that I started thinking about, well, how does this happen? Because there has to be room to roll over. There has to be room to make the shift. Society is big. It's like a ship, You have to, it turns slow. It's not fast. It doesn't turn on a dime. And if you think of it like a train, you have to build tracks and it turns real slow, or you have to slow it down and then go backwards and reverse. It's not an easy accomplishment. So I was thinking to myself, how could you have so much room in society to accomplish a takeover like that? And it's not so much a takeover as it is, let me have a drink. Let me explain. So look at society as dichotomous, as having a religious component and a secular component, okay? So what happened was that we lost sight of the idea that secular only works when you presume the same thing you presume in the Godful movies, a Christian worldview. The presumption of those who came up with the idea of having a secular space, were presupposing, even like the founding fathers, they're presupposing a Christian society where the big fights in the town square, in the secular square, the public square, where the fights that are going to happen there are going to be over things like baptism, communion, who does what, if they should be singing hymns, about the Christian politics of the day, right? Because only in a Western Christian society can you have anything secular. You cannot have, can you imagine having secular something in Saudi Arabia? There's no such thing in the Islamic world as secular, okay? It only exists in the Christian world. There's no such thing anywhere else where it will work. But we've lost sight of that. We've been hamstrung by propaganda and our own words. Even our own words have been used against us. And what happened was more and more people came into the secular space and realized that they could not presuppose a Christian worldview and still be allowed to exist in the secular space. So as the Christians allowed for very anti-Christian worldviews to come in. And you're seeing the symptoms of that in the movies you watch, especially the horror genre.
Like I'm saying.
Just think about what I'm saying. Think about how the focus has changed. Evil is kind of something to be pursued now and not run away from, right? Right? Like in Late Night with the Devil. It's something pursued and welcomed in, because a space has been made. I mean, imagine, if you want to think sinister, imagine it this way. Imagine that a space was made, and so now demons are coming in, ideas and thoughts that are not light and life and truth, right? No, so these dark ideas are filling the void left by Christians being beaten out of the public space, you know? Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. From Godful to Godless, the evolution of horror in a post-Christian world. And it's true. It's true. The secular space can only exist with a presupposed worldview undergirding it. It can't exist anywhere else, and it doesn't. The movies were entertaining, I gritted my teeth through a couple of them, but they were entertaining. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Nuke Lutheran.